Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an exciting day, and the reason is because, well, tomorrow the market, as it opens, of course, Tesla should be trading at its new split adjusted price. So that to me, it's always exciting, right? Even though I don't really have any skin in the game at the moment, again, I love Tesla. Like once I personally, once the market falls to where I think it'll fall, ultimately not just Tesla, just the whole market in general, I'm pretty much going to be like 90% plus of my portfolio is going to be Tesla, right? Mainly because I absolutely love this company. So, even though I have no literal skin in the game at the moment, it's always fun to see that. But either way, guys, let's get into it. If you enjoy, please don't forget to hit the like button. It does help quite a bit. But let's just get right into it. Tesla ending the day pretty much flat, up pretty much 0.25%. Not a whole lot. Ending the day at $891.57. Now, it did have a really nice day to start off, right? It pretty much filled two gaps today, right? Today was a very sideways day. It's kind of what I expected. I actually didn't think we'd go up this high, but then I realized there was a gap up here, and that's essentially why we went up this high. I thought we'd get rejected at the 900, but I wasn't surprised that we ended below 900, right? That did not shock me whatsoever. This is kind of more, this is like pretty close to what I expected to happen. But, as a quick rundown, pretty much we gapped up, ran all the way up to around this kind of, 908-ish level, right? Which ended up being this gap fill from all the way over here on the left, you can see, right? Which pretty much, again, was around $908 and about 50 cents roughly, right? Which is, roughly where we got rejected. If you look at it on the 1 hour, it makes a lot more sense. All right, so you can see here, perfect rejection right at the gap fill. And then we, of course, sold off the rest of the day and also filled the gap from this morning as well, which I think is actually quite hilarious, right? So yeah, we pretty much filled both gaps. So Tesla is just kind of chilling right now. I'm pretty sure there is a major gap to the south side somewhere. Yeah, this one right here, right? There is still this massive gap sitting at pretty much 740 that I'm like very confident will get filled at some point. Obviously that will be changed, divide that by 3, right? But I'm pretty sure this will get filled. Again, it's not like tomorrow or something like that necessarily, obviously. But, it's over the next, maybe month, 2 months, maybe even the rest of the Q3 or 4, I do expect it to easily fill this gap. So let's just talk over, what I expect to happen to Tesla. Again, guys, I do want to make this extremely obvious and extremely clear. Tesla is still looking bearish to me, right? It is still setting lower lows and lower highs on the RSI, even though the stock isn't, the RSI is. And the RSI is like a leading indicator usually, right? Just because the RSI is showing it right now doesn't mean it's just going to happen like tomorrow, right? Especially on a longer time frame. But because the RSI is showing lower lows and lower highs, so you can see we went up here, we're just constantly setting lower highs. I mean, to be fair, this was a lower high regardless on both ends, which is technically not a good thing either way. But the fact that we did set a lower low is the most important part in this specific example because the stock did not. I've said this before, but again, I do want to make this very clear. Right, that is a bearish divergence, and especially looking on the daily is probably the most reliable one for just kind of general trend. And because the daily is also showing this RSI divergence, the bearish divergence, that to me, that tells me that, yeah, the longer time frame, again, next month, 2 months, 3, 4, maybe even 5 months, something like that. But the next, longer-ish time frame, somewhere around there, I don't know exactly when, of course, I wish I did, believe me. We are in a downtrend. We are still in an overall net bearish trend. So until this can start, looking a little bit better, yeah, that's kind of what I'm expecting. So very quickly taking a usual look at the main indicators, we're still above the 21 EMA, so the short-term momentum is still kind of there, hasn't completely died off yet. We're still hugging this white line on the Bollinger Band. I've said this several times when we were trading up here, how I expect it to come to the white line at some point and probably hug it for a little bit, exactly what we're doing right now. And on top of that, we have the 50 moving average well above that. However, the 200 is still showing us some, pretty serious rejection, which again is not surprising. I pretty much called this out yesterday. I did say I'll be surprised if we go over 900, but then I forgot that we had the gap fill up here. So now, we came up, filled it quickly, and then we, of course, pretty much came right back under 900 and held there for the rest of the day and, of course, closed below it, right? Not too surprising, in my opinion, to see this kind of action at the moment, to be honest. Now, we didn't really rally too hard into this split. I mean, you can argue that this was the rally into the split, honestly, but we didn't rally like extra hard, as we kind of really entered the split, because, today was pretty much the last day before the split happens, which is going to happen. It's pretty much happening as we speak. Let's just say that, right? Because again, tomorrow as the market opens, Tesla will be, or it should be at least, trading at its new price. Again, 891.5 divided by 3, right? The 5 and the 10, we are still pretty much trading in between them. We're still getting rejected by the 10, but we're still slightly above the 5, though it's like, obviously on very, very thin ice. But ultimately still, guys, the easiest way to think about this is just we're in a downtrend. It is what it is, right? It is what it is. Now, there was comments that were saying, it's just, I mean, you're always gonna get stupid comments. It is what it is, right? But some comments were just kind of like, oh, you're all cash. No wonder you wanted to fall. You're biased to the downside. Or sometimes if if I buy a bullish position, people are like, oh, you're biased to the upside. You're biased to the upside. Yeah, no fucking shit. That's why I bought the position to begin with, because I'm not just buying, I'm not just closing my eyes and throwing darts and buying randomly, right? I'm buying it because, yeah, I think it'll bounce here, or because I think it'll fall here, or whatever. Yeah, so obviously I think it'll fall. That's why I don't have a position. Naturally, I'm biased to the downside because I just think that's what's going to happen. Hence, else I would have a position open, right? It's just, it is what it is. You get stupid comments, a lot of really stupid people on the internet, but just thought I'd throw that out there in case people with, actual logical brains can, were maybe thinking the same thing, right? I just want to make that very clear. Like, naturally, yeah, of course, I'm biased to a certain direction based on the position I'm in, mainly because I'm in that position due to what I think will happen next, right? I'm not going to buy something that I think is going to fall. I'm not going to sell something that I think is going to go up, right? That's just kind of how it works. And in this case, I do think we are net to go down, or else I would have a position at the moment, right? It's really that simple. But nonetheless, right? So again, on the time frames, like the 1 hour, you can see we had a lower low here, setting overall a lower high. The one thing that maybe not too bad though, and I would say the one potential, I guess, bullish indicator for Tesla is holding above this kind of like 877 to 880 level. And the reason for that is because if we hold above this level, that means Tesla can potentially have a very small, let's do it in the smaller time frame, it's a little bit easier to see, but you can have a very small inverted head and shoulders, right? That being the shoulder, this being the head, and this potentially right here being the shoulder as well, right? But the way you want this to work is you don't want the final shoulder here to, ideally, you don't want it to go lower than this initial shoulder, but even more importantly, you don't want it to enter the head's territory, essentially, right? You want it to bounce off the head's territory. See how this one, before this head even formed, but how it technically bounced right off this, kind of double rejection that the head had. Same concept here. You don't want this to get into the territory of the head, which again, pretty much is under like 880 to 877-ish. Is where you really want this one to start, really showing some serious support. And if we fall below that, this pattern essentially breaks apart, right? But on the flip side, that's the bullish side. That's what the bulls want to see, right? If the bulls want to see any form of, movement to the upside still. However, the bears, what do the bears want to see? I've talked about this before, is pretty much you want to see this double top pattern actually play out, right? At the moment, it's looking good. However, there is still a chance it doesn't play out, right? The bulls want to see this pattern fall or fail rather by breaking above like around 940. The bears want to see this pattern pretty much get confirmed with a break down below pretty much 840. If we break below 840, pretty much this low right here that we had right here, if we lose this right here, this area of support, again, being around 840-ish, give or take like 5 points, let's say, right? So 835 to 845, that kind of region right there should be like a nice, beautiful demand zone. Demand zone. If that falls and if that happens to not be enough demand or whatever, then that's bad. Then that's not only is that bad, and we're obviously going to fall even further because now we're going to go to the next level. However, that also means that there's a 99% chance that this double top pattern is now going to be playing out, right? Because that's really important to understand, guys, right? That's probably the most important thing to be paying attention to, in my honest opinion. And on top of that, if we lose this blue line and 840, that's like two things that ideally you want to hold for the bulls. So that's kind of what I'm seeing, guys. If you look at it in the shorter time frames, right? So again, if you look at something like the 1 hour, the 2 hour, the 3 hour, all these longer time frames, we're just setting lower lows on the RSI and essentially, again, creating that bearish divergence that I've been talking about for quite a long time. Even the 1 hour has a somewhat bearish divergence. You can see the RSI made a lower low, even though the stock is still well above this area here. Same concept as well, right? But as you slowly start getting in the slightly shorter time frame, we'll take a quick look. As you can see earlier, I said it was looking a little bit bullish back when we were trading around this 860 area, and clearly we went up, right? I did enter a bullish position. I did exit around like 885, obviously a little bit early. Wish I held a little bit longer because theta would have played in my favor. It's fine though, it is what it is. Still made like 40% profit on my sold put. Not complaining too much, though, could have been better. But nonetheless, that's kind of what was happening. But now you can see the RSI is plummeting quite aggressively, right? You can see the RSI. So even though the stock is sitting around, let's say 890-ish, right? Which is where we are right now. The RSI is all the way down at like 41, 42. Back when we were sitting at, let's say somewhere, even like, let's say this area right here where we fell, which was around 885, the RSI was sitting all the way up at 54. So even the shorter time frame is starting to show a bearish divergence. So I'm just seeing a lot more negatives than positives at the very moment. So we'll see what happens with that. Now, the one thing that might be okay for the bulls and, like a silver lining is the fact that the SPY, doesn't look atrocious. And then what I mean by it doesn't look atrocious, I mean more in like the very short term again. So I do want to make that, you know, extremely clear. It doesn't look atrocious in the short term. And what I mean by that is that the SPY, it looks like it might want to look for a bounce relatively soon. Not necessarily like, you know, this week, but what I wouldn't be surprised is if the SPY maybe sets a little bit lower low here, maybe it got to 410, you know, maybe like even as low as 408, anywhere between this kind of 410 to 408 range, and then could potentially see a nice little bounce, maybe look for a gap fill, and then from there, I think is where we can start, you know, really seeing the fall. So that's kind of what I'm personally being, you know, paying attention to at the very moment, guys. On top of that, the one thing that could be a little bit bad for the SPY, however, is that it could also be setting up a potential bearish head and shoulders. So I showed you the bullish head and shoulders on the very short time frame on Tesla. The RSI is, by the way, looking at shorts on the 2 hour. That is a quite ugly RSI. But, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if the SPY does get a bit of a relief bounce here because it did fall quite aggressively. Probably up to one of these gap fills, whether it's 422, maybe even 427, though I would probably at first, you know, look for the 422, see how it reacts there and go from there, right? That's what I would be looking at first and foremost as it breaks out of this little kind of arguably like a bear flag or a bull flag. But we'll see, of course, we'll see. You never know for sure, right? But the point is the RSI looks extremely oversold, but it's also looking very bearish. And what you want to see here for the bears is you want to see a run up, ultimately get rejected by this gap fill, maybe even here or here, one of these two up here, and then ultimately set a lower high, and then the RSI just continues plummeting from there, right? But one thing that the SPY can potentially do is set, again, a bearish head and shoulders, right? That's the shoulder, that's the head. And again, you don't want to see this one get up too high. So, like, I honestly think that this gap fill up here, this 420-ish gap fill, can potentially happen, and you can still argue a head and shoulders pattern is set in play, though it's a little bit wonkier. So ideally, you don't want it to go below like this area right here, but you can technically still go up here, and it's still viable in my opinion because it doesn't really truly enter the head's range just yet. It really only enters the head's range if it gets past this gap, and let's say it gets all the way up to this 427 gap instead, then you've pretty much invalidated this pattern. But if it gets only to like 422, then that's not too bad. And the reason I'm bringing this up regarding the SPY is because, well, of course, this affects Tesla, right? Tesla gets affected by how the indices move as well. QQQ as well, same concept here. Wouldn't be surprised if QQQ, again, shoulder, head, and then potentially another shoulder. This one actually looks a lot more like how you would want to see it for the bears, at least, where you have a shoulder, you have the head, and then you probably have the gap fill shoulder right here coming up as well, similar to how the SPY will go up and fill its first gap as well, but not the second gap up here. That's essentially what I'm seeing at the moment, guys. So overall, again, I do want to make this very clear. I am net bearish, even though I think that the market has a little bit of room to potentially run maybe next week or something like that, again, to maybe fill these gaps or something of the sorts. I am still net bearish, and I actually might even enter some puts if this were to happen and we were to go up to those gap fills, right? So that's just kind of my thoughts, guys. A little bit of a longer video, but I just want to make it very clear. Again, I take my thoughts, and what I see, and I incorporate it with what I see other people say as well, like on Twitter and things like that, or people that I personally trust, the people that I, you know, think that have, you know, good information, good mindset, they have good, you know, understanding of how the charts can move, and I take their thoughts as well, and I kind of incorporate it all together, and then kind of give you guys the final result, if that makes sense, right? What I see other people are saying that I trust, combine it into one, and there's your, you know, thing. It's always bad if someone just thinks that they're the only person, you know, that's correct and never listen to anyone else or take any advice from anyone ever. That's not a good sign. You want to make sure, you know, there's a lot of smart people out there, but there's also a lot of stupid people out there. So you want to make sure you're filtering it quite well. So anyway, that's a completely different topic and different point, but that's what I'm seeing. Tomorrow is going to be an exciting day to see how Tesla trades with the new, you know, thing. Again, after the last split, it did fall quite aggressively, so we'll see if the same happens or not. But that is what I'm seeing. Let me know what you guys think down below. See you for the next one. Peace.